Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Riley K. Jones. I'm a writer, teacher, and authortuber. And today we're going to talk about books. So these are the books that I read in July, and as you can tell, there were more than two. Yes, summer. So I gobbled up 3 different thrillers this month in like 3 weeks. Just each week I basically read a book. Most of them, 3 of them, were thrillers. So I will go in the order that I read them in, and the first book is Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is a sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and it was absolutely fabulous. So I ate this up. I just barely could put it down. Very similarly to the first book in this series, I could not put that one down as well. And so I'm so glad I was able to read this. It follows Pip as she has retired from being a detective and actually hosts a podcast that she did covering her last case, but then a case regarding one of her closest friends draws her back into becoming a detective. And I thought that Holly Jackson did a wonderful job. Writing thrillers can be really hard, really difficult, but I felt like she nailed it out of the park. I was actually very inspired in some aspects to see what she did right to help me better master my book. It was also just highly enjoyable, and I was reading this on a plane, and I powerhoused through this. Like more than half of this book I read on the plane and finished on my flight. So awesome book. Would totally recommend. Though, funny story about this specific book. So I got this book for Christmas, which actually is the British version, because the American version had only come out I think in March of 2021, and I got this December 2020, and this is actually the British version. So some things were a little bit different, so that was funny. But thankfully, like, I've listened to a ton of British YouTubers and know enough British slang and terminology to follow along a track. British version, American version, both obviously gonna be great. They're basically the same story, just set in different countries. The next book that I'm going to talk about is another book that I did start on the plane and finished when I got home from my trip, and that is Alexa Dunn's The Ivies. So I heard a lot of hype about this book since Alexa Dunn had mentioned it, and I am so proud of her for getting onto one of the big 4 now publishers, and so happy for her. So congrats, Alexa. I had heard so much hype and I could not wait to read this book. So I pre-ordered it, and then as soon as I was finished with Good Girl, Bad Blood. Good Girl, Bad Blood. I knew I needed to read this book, and it was a wild ride, and I loved every moment of it. So a little bit about this book. We know that Olivia, who is a scholarship student, goes to this prestigious boarding school, Clafton Academy, and her friends are set on going to prestigious Ivy League schools. They create this little group called the Ivies, wanting to go to all these specific Ivy League schools, and each girl's assigned a specific school based off of their little cohort ringleader person, Avery. She's like, you're gonna go to all these schools, but Harvard, Avery wants to go to. However, Olivia also wants to go into it, applies for the school, and gets into Harvard, and Avery does not. But then there's also another girl who does get in, and then, so I mean, it's kind of a spoiler, but Alexa also said it's not really a spoiler, and then gets murdered. So we're wondering who was the murderer. And I'll have to say, just a tiny bit spoiler, not like actual spoiler, so like if you read it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read it, it's not going to ruin your reading of it. But the ending was a lot different than I had thought it was going to be. There were some unique decisions that Alexa made. It threw me off a little bit, but works so beautifully well. And I, like, kudos and like awesomeness. Like, I loved it so much. Especially like the feeling. It's like something that most YA thrillers, they don't cover, and I just loved that so much. Although there were some surprises that I was like, oh, I actually did not know that was gonna happen, it actually worked. And although I was sad about some of those things, like, oh, I really wanted like this thing to happen and it didn't, it works so well and I loved it so much. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned this, it is more of a dark academia type of mentality. Prep school, boarding school, murder, dark academia vibes. Highly recommend The Ivies by Alexa Dunn. The next book is one of my favorite authors. I have been reading her books since I was in middle school, and she wrote the Blues for Nightmare series as well as the Touch series and a few others that I have loved, including Jane Anonymous, and that is Lori Farah Stollert's The Last Secret You'll Ever Keep. So this book is a companion novel to Jane Anonymous. You don't have necessarily have read Jane Anonymous to read this one. It is referenced in a way that if you read it, you're like, oh, I understand, but it's not something that you would be completely left out if you hadn't read it. So this book is about a high school senior who was kidnapped for 4 days in a well, and she was able to escape, and then she tries to reconcile with being kidnapped, and eventually no one believes that she was kidnapped. They just think she went crazy, but she's like, no, I'm not crazy. This thing happened to me, and no one really kind of believes her. Everyone kind of thinks she's just like hamming it up and playing a victim and making things up. She's like, no, I actually, this happened to me, I'm not crazy. And it is a fabulous read, really thriller-esque. She takes you in twists and turns. There's an the narrator is kind of unreliable. You're questioning everything that she says until the end, and when everything is explained. And so very awesome read. Like, I love this book so much. It was so well done. There are actually some questions that I still have about the book of like, wait, is this even like there are times that, and maybe this is a little spoilery, so spoiler alert, there at the end of the book I'm wondering if certain things weren't also manipulated. I won't say by who, but I'm wondering, like, is this just all one person? Is this all made up? Was the other thing also made up? Like I know if you know, you know, but like, it is one of those books that it's just kind of like an Inception, Matrix mentality of like, wait a second, I wonder because of this. So I really hope she releases another book along the same vein of this to confirm some of my questions, because I'm wondering if like these people or these things were also made up for the thing that happened. So I'm talking in riddles because I don't want to spoil it, but I'm also like really excited to talk about it. So if you have also read this book, let me know in the comments down below, because I would love to hit you up and like find out like what else, like how did you handle this book, and do you have questions to me, because like I'm trying to wrap my brain around some things, and it was really good. Totally would recommend checking those two books out. And if you haven't read the Blues for Nightmare series or the Touch series, those two are also really awesome. The last book that I read in July is completely from a different vein. It is C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters. So this is just a little short novella type of book. It's only like 200 pages long. I read this mostly because I'm going to be teaching some of this in my classroom, so I needed to prepare myself, but also it had been on my to-be-read list for a while now. And Screwtape Letters is about a demon who is writing to his young nephew called Wormtongue, I believe, Wormwood. And Screwtape is the uncle, and he is writing to his nephew Wormwood on how to lead this person, this human that he's been trained to and tasked to follow, astray. This book was, I know, the hardest book that C.S. Lewis has ever written, because it is such a mind bend for him, because the enemy in this book is God and the Lord and Savior is Satan. So there's a lot of like flip-flop mentalities. Heresy is actually what Christians would call the truth. So there's a lot of like flip-flop mentalities. fascinating read, really a very thought-provoking book, very much so getting yourself thinking about like, oh, what is happening? What is Lewis trying to say? How does it apply back to the world? Really thought-provoking and also discussion-provoking. So fascinating read. If you haven't read that or are not familiar with C.S. Lewis, he writes a ton of books. His most famous series is Chronicles of Narnia, which I have not read all of them yet, so that's another thing I need to finish doing. And that is all that I read for July, so I'm very happy with my progress. I'm already almost finished with another book, which I will release next month in my next book review, and I already have a few more lined up. So what book should you guys read this summer? Did you guys read anything for summer reading, or did you just have some beach reads that you want to check out? What books did you read in the month of July? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please make sure to give this video a nice big thumbs up. And if you haven't already, click subscribe. I release new videos on all things writing and reading every Thursday. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Keep writing, keep reading, and stay creative. Bye guys!